Hi, welcome to Henry's Jumping Pig. Here we draw attention to the goodness of God around us because that's worth thinking about. Whatever is true, honest, just, pure, lovely, and a good report, if there's anything excellent or worthy of praise, that's what we're here for. If this is the first time you're joining us, I would encourage you to go back and listen to episode 1 because I explain exactly what Henry's Jumping Pig is and kind of the story behind it and how we even got here. But I'm so glad that you're here. It's going to be a fun week. I'd love it if you like, comment, share, subscribe, because I just want to stir up more conversation about things that are worth talking and thinking about. So the more that you engage, the more fun we have. So we're in week 2 of Henry's Jumping Pig, and I honestly wasn't sure what God had for me in week 2. And so I was super surprised when the topic for this week just basically came up and slapped me in the face. Monday morning, I sat down to read the Bible, and I'm reading through Genesis right now, which I honestly love because I love the stories in the Old Testament. I think they're just easy to listen to, easy to learn from. So I walked into this moment super excited, looking forward to what I was going to read about. Well, my disappointment could not be hidden. If I was going to title Genesis 27, I would call it Rebecca. Everything I never want to be. I was so irritated reading the Bible this morning because there was just so much lying, cheating, stealing, and dishonesty. I couldn't even get over it. It's like I forgot the story of Jacob and Esau, but it caught me off guard. And immediately I was so irritated. I knew exactly what I had to look for this week. So this week we're talking about honesty. As soon as I decided to start looking for honesty, I honestly got a little bit worried because I don't think that honesty is a value in our culture anymore. I think it's really easy to live a life of dishonesty and still be fine today. And I don't think that's good. And so I got a little bit nervous once I decided to look for honesty because I thought, am I even going to have anything to talk about? Am I going to find any honesty this week? And I was so glad that God was super faithful and just showed me so many honest moments this week that I was thrilled to find. The first one was on Monday. One of my little kindergarten violin students was holding her violin while we were talking about something, and all of a sudden we heard this pop, and she kind of jumped a little bit, and I was taken back a little bit, and then I realized, oh, she was just holding the peg on her violin and it just popped and made everything kind of go out of tune. But really that wasn't the moment. The moment that was my favorite was immediately after this peg popped. She just leaned in and said, "I'm sorry." That was amazing. It was like honesty came and just gave me a big hug. And I realized, okay, here's my first honest moment for the week. And in that moment, I felt like I experienced from this sweet little girl the ownership of knowing I just did something wrong and I'm going to own it and I'm just going to apologize and be humble and just say I'm sorry. Wow, what a valuable thing. What a gift. To say, yes, I know I just did something and it caused a problem and I'm sorry. And to do it so quickly. I loved that moment. We don't always see that. And I just treasure that moment. That moment was just a gift. And so that was my first example of honesty from a little 5-year-old that I hope we can all embrace a little bit more. If we can just say, I'm going to be honest. When I make a mistake, I'm going to own it. I'm going to own it, fully own it. Just say, oh, that was me and I'm sorry. Be humble about it. And it was so easy to deal with. Like she could have lied about it. She could have, whatever, responded in 100 different ways. but she just owned it. And because she owned it so quickly and so humbly, I just said, oh, it's no big deal, and took it and tuned the violin, and it wasn't a big problem at all. And maybe we miss some of those moments because we don't realize that our humble ownership can just help us move past a mistake really quickly. But that was my first honest moment that I experienced this week that I absolutely loved. As I was reflecting on that honest moment, I was reminded of something that had happened a couple weeks ago. And one of my kids has a friend that was just navigating some misunderstandings, I think, among some of their friends. And my daughter's friend had this issue that kind of came up, and it involved my daughter. And she came straight to my daughter and had a conversation with her about it. For teenagers, that can be a little bit challenging. Honestly, for adults, it can be really challenging. For anybody, it can be really challenging. But I was reminded of this moment because I saw honesty and willingness to have a conversation and to address head on what needed to be talked about. And I remember that my daughter's response to this was gratefulness. She was so grateful that this friend, who really was demonstrating she was a friend by coming straight to her, was not just a friend. She was a good friend. She was willing to talk about misunderstandings, willing to go straight to the heart of an issue, willing to have a conversation that could maybe be a little bit tricky to navigate. And this was honesty. This was another opportunity for honesty, for real conversation, for common ground to be found between friends. And so as I was thinking about honesty, I thought, oh, that was another honest moment. That was another moment where someone demonstrated the willingness to have a conversation, a real conversation, and work through things that some people might just assume something else, or just blow it off and say, oh, forget about it, or might not value the relationship enough to take the time to have that conversation. So that was another great example of honesty that had happened within the last couple weeks for us that I loved, and that made me treasure that even more. I have another student, and she's an adult student who has decided to study piano in her free time now because she's now retired and she wants to just have a new hobby and learn a new skill. And as I was studying honesty, one of the things that I did was look up definitions of honesty. And some of the words that were used to define honesty were simple, unpretentious, fairly earned through hard work. And when I was thinking on some of those words, I thought of this other student, and I realized she's honest. Every week she comes to my studio and has worked hard. She is unpretentious. She's working and studying, and there's no fluff. There's no excuses. She's there to learn, and she's being an honest learner. She's fairly earning and studying and learning the skills that she wants to have. And I thought, wow, like I never thought about that with her, but I made a point of when she came to her lesson complimenting her for being such an honest and hardworking student, because even that is not common, and it's worth being celebrated. Isn't it amazing that it's so easy to overlook good, honest things? They're not always flashy. They're not in neon colors. They're not, grabbing your attention. They might be a lot quieter, and they might be really steady, and they're busy at work, so they're not trying to get your attention. And this week, because I was focusing on honesty, I noticed her honest hard work. So it was just flipping the way that I was looking at people, and she was another person in my life that I hadn't even thought about that is a great example of honesty. The last interaction that I want to talk about was a situation, a conversation that happened with my husband. And when I was talking with him and one of our kids, I realized that my husband is a pro at having honest conversations. And I have watched him grow and mature over many years. And I know, and he would tell you that one of his struggles early on would be having really deep conversations with one person because he's a connector. He loves, seeing a lot of people and making a lot of people feel comfortable, and he thrives in environments with a lot of people and just connecting with a lot of different people. But early on, he would have struggled maybe connecting with one person for a long period of time, having a really deep conversation. That is not his issue anymore. He's better at having some deep conversations than I am. And I was always the person that could go a mile deep with one or two people, but he's mastered that. And I think it's because he's grown and matured and paid attention and become aware of himself and been willing to have honest conversations. And I was just so impressed by the fact that he could honestly listen and hear someone and give feedback and really hear where they were coming from and where they were at and know what was best to say and not say and where to lean in and where to just wait. And I was just super impressed with his ability to have a great conversation, and I loved it. But even in that conversation, I realized, oh, I have to be willing to be honest too. And I guard my own heart a lot of times, and that can be great. But sometimes I put up extra walls because I don't want to be vulnerable and reveal what is in my heart to someone because it might be accompanied with emotion or tears. If you know me, I'm a pretty emotional person, and that's not a bad thing, but sometimes it can be embarrassing if I'm like sharing my heart and it, tears are bubbling up too. But I have to be okay with that. And I have to be vulnerable and willing to share my own heart if I want to be honest. And we had a conversation with one of our kids where I realized, I've got to be honest here. I've got to be vulnerable. I have to be courageous enough to be honest with you and share what I'm really thinking. And that can be hard. But since I was thinking about honesty, I went, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to open up and share my heart. So it just made me think there's all these different ways of being honest, all these different ways that we can demonstrate honesty, whether it's having the humility and the quick, I'm sorry, the ownership that demonstrates honesty, or maybe it's being a good friend that is willing to just have a deeper conversation that might be difficult, or maybe it's being honest and hardworking and simple and just doing things that you can do and working hard, or maybe it's being honest and having the courage to challenge someone or listen to someone and really invite an honest conversation and ask good questions. Or maybe you're like me and you have to encourage yourself to open up your own heart and truly be honest about things that, maybe aren't the easiest for you to share. Whatever it is, we can all affect those around us by being honest. And my prayer and hope for you is that you would find the places that you can give honesty as a gift to the people around you. Because when you give honestly to someone else, it even opens a door for them to say, oh, I can be honest. I can share that with the people around me too. And then we don't have all this lying, stealing, and cheating like we had in Genesis 27 that absolutely drove me crazy. That it does exist in the world today, but so does honesty. And so let's be honest. Let's be people that bring the goodness of God to those around us, and let's share that with everyone in our lives, because that is worth doing. That is worth living. That's worth thinking about. So, one final thing, whatever is true, honest, just, pure, lovely, good, if there's anything excellent or of a good or worthy of praise, think on those things, act on those things, live that out, because that's a good life. I'm so glad that you joined me today at Henry's Jumping Pig. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things, so we can have so many more conversations about things that are good. And let's just bring honesty to the people around us. See you guys soon.